The woman gracefully slipped off her clothes, revealing a stunning and breathtaking figure. Next, she changed into a sleek, professional swimsuit, with a surfboard in hand. She ran toward the ocean with determination, facing the crashing waves head-on. She paddled out, embracing the exhilarating thrill of being struck by the sea. However, the moment of peace didn't last long. Nancy soon sensed something was off. There seemed to be something mysterious moving quietly beneath the water. Just as she was filled with suspicion, a dolphin suddenly leapt out of the sea, shattering the calm surface. It was a rare and mesmerizing sight, but Nancy didn't think much of it. With curiosity in her heart, she decided to follow the dolphins. Before long, she came across a massive whale carcass. The surrounding water was stained deep red with blood, a gruesome and disturbing scene. Even more chilling was the enormous wound carved into the whale's body. Nancy immediately realized there had to be a ferocious and unknown creature lurking beneath the waves. Without hesitation, she turned around and began paddling toward the shore, but she was completely unaware. A shark had already silently appeared behind her. The moment she surfaced, she quickly looked around. To her despair, she realized the shore was far too distant. There was no way she could swim back in time. With no other choice, she pinned all her hopes on the whale carcass. As she swam toward it, the blood in the water drew the shark closer. In a heart-pounding instant, she used every ounce of strength to climb onto the whale's body, barely escaping the shark's jaws. Seeing her leg bleeding profusely, she quickly removed her safety strap and tightly wrapped it above the wound, hoping to stop any more blood from spilling into the sea. Just then, she was thrilled to spot a car on the shore. To Nancy, it felt like a lifeline had finally appeared. She mustered every bit of strength she had and shouted desperately for help toward the beach. Seeing the car slowly come to a stop, she was filled with hope, thinking her cries had been heard. But to her shock, the man simply adjusted a few belongings, then drove away without a second glance. As she watched the vehicle disappear into the distance, Nancy sank into a deep sense of despair. And to make matters worse, the shark was still there, lurking beneath the surface, refusing to leave. At that moment, staying calm was her only chance of survival. Nancy stood up and carefully surveyed her surroundings. She realized she was drifting farther and farther from the shore. The nearest place to take refuge was a lone, isolated buoy. With no other options, Nancy laid back down on the rock to rest. Before she knew it, exhaustion overtook her, and she fell asleep. She only stirred again when the cool sting of seawater touched her wound. The pain brought her back to consciousness. Her top priority now was to stitch up the injury. She removed the earrings from both ears and carefully placed them into the water to clean and disinfect them. But the moment the earring pierced through her flesh, the searing pain nearly caused her to black out. Fighting through the agony, she tore off part of her swimsuit and wrapped it tightly around the wound. At this point, Nancy felt completely lost. Unsure of where fate would take her, all she could do was sit quietly on the lonely rock, waiting for destiny to unfold. Night fell quickly, and the temperature plummeted. To stay warm, she had no choice but to remove more of her swimsuit, but her wound was still open and vulnerable. She tore off a sleeve and carefully wrapped it around her leg, starting from her ankle and working her way up. She did her best to bind the injury tightly, with the cold and pain pressing down on her. Nancy eventually drifted off to sleep without even realizing it. In the middle of the night, a crab crawled up her thigh. Without hesitation, Nancy slapped it dead with one swift motion. She then brought the crab to her mouth and began chewing, but the revolting taste made it almost impossible to swallow. Nancy had already been stranded there for a full day and night. Just then, she spotted her surfboard floating on the water's surface. A flicker of hope ignited in her heart. She decided to take a risk and try to retrieve the board to escape. But the moment she entered the water, Her wound began bleeding profusely. The scent of blood quickly drew the shark back. Sensing the danger, Nancy immediately turned around, swimming with every ounce of strength back to the rock. Thankfully, she made it just in time. While resting on the rock, she was surprised to spot what looked like a person lying on the shore. Nancy immediately shouted for help, and the man was startled awake. Overjoyed, she signaled for him to grab her phone and call for help. The man found her backpack and pulled out the phone, but greed took hold of him. He decided to keep the belongings for himself. Just as he was about to leave, he noticed the surfboard floating nearby. Nancy desperately warned him that there was a shark in the water, but the greedy man didn't believe her. In the end, the shark dragged him under. When he finally struggled back onto the beach, only half of his body remained. The horrifying sight left Nancy shaken to her core. At dawn the next morning, 2 surfers arrived at the beach. Nancy shouted at the top of her lungs, warning them about the shark in the water, but the crashing waves were too loud, and the 2 men couldn't hear her cries for help. As Nancy watched the ocean turn red with blood, she sank into despair once again. Thankfully, the man's camera floated to the surface. It might be her one chance at survival. Nancy refused to let any opportunity slip away. She braced herself, counted down from 30, and dove into the water without hesitation. Just as her fingers grasped the camera, a chill crept up her spine from behind. Nancy tossed the camera with her recorded distress message into the ocean. She silently prayed that someone would find it, and that it might be her only chance of rescue. At that moment, the tide was rising quickly. If the water rose high enough to submerge the rock, she knew she wouldn't survive. Now, her only hope was to swim to the floating buoy across the water. Just as she hesitated, unsure if she could make it, a group of jellyfish surfaced nearby. Though not deadly, these jellyfish carried venom strong enough to cause pain to a shark. The tide continued to rise, slowly swallowing the last bit of the rock. Nancy dove into the water and swam toward the buoy with all her strength. The shark noticed her movement and immediately gave chase. Sensing danger, the jellyfish released their venom into the water. The shark writhed in pain, its momentum broken as it veered off course. Nancy seized the moment and managed to reach the buoy, but just as she tried to climb on, something unexpected happened. Seeing that its attack was futile, the shark reluctantly retreated for the time being. Nancy's tense heart relaxed just a little. At that moment, a cruise ship sailed not far away. She felt a glimmer of hope, remembering there might be a signal flare in the observation tower. She pried open the iron box and, sure enough, found one, but as she grabbed the flare, the bullet accidentally slipped into the sea. Without hesitation, Nancy dove into the water to retrieve a signal flare. She pulled the trigger only to find it was a dud. Undeterred, she plunged into the water again. This time, she managed to gather all the remaining flares, but as she fired the second one, the cruise ship had already disappeared from sight. Her hope was dashed once again. The shark still lurked menacingly beneath the water. Nancy aimed at the surface and fired her last signal flare. The leaked fuel ignited instantly, and roaring flames surrounded the shark, but fire was useless in the sea. The shark quickly swam into deeper water, extinguishing the flames on its body. Then, with a powerful leap, it shot out of the water. Just when she thought death was inevitable, the steel rods beneath the water gave her an idea. The iron chain connecting to the buoy was about to be torn apart by the shark. Nancy seized the moment, dove into the water, and grabbed the chain tightly. The instant the chain broke, the powerful pull dragged her swiftly toward the steel rods. The shark was right behind her. In the end, Nancy relied on her wit and courage to finally defeat the shark, but after holding her breath for so long, she fell unconscious. Fortunately, the camera she had thrown earlier was found by a young boy. The boy called his father, who arrived just in time to rescue her. This thrilling fight for survival finally came to an end,